supposed to sing, talk about recording, send in a recording of ourselves. And the other one was related. The other two were related in the sense of it being part of a music compilation, let's say, where they would send out the click track and and the music. So we would play along with the music, record ourselves, send it in, so they could add it to this thousands of people. It's a honk song, playing the same thing together. And I really didn't know how to do that. You know, I could see you could record on Zoom. I've heard it's too big to send, and it's not good enough to send. So that's part of why I'm here, besides the idea of like of recording something to send out. It's how do you I get no idea. And people would like tell me, oh, you do this and you download this or that, and it's like so I want to be part of a thousands of people band.
Thank you, Ruby. I think that that most of the people that put together those kinds of videos they tend to be pretty skilled at working with all kinds of different audio that you send. No?
I don't know how, and I don't know how to send it to them.
Ah.
I don't know what to do. All I would imagine is to record it from as one of them was video as well, to record it from Zoom, but then the file is supposedly too big from Zoom. Do I use my phone? And then how do I send that in? How do I actually record it well so that it sounds great?
Ruby, can I interrupt for a second? Do you have, and I don't know, maybe we should sort of formally start the workshop, or I'm not sure, but just as, are you on a Mac or a PC?
I'm on a PC.
Okay.
I have an iPhone, but I'm not dealing with that. That's, I could.
Well, maybe we'll try and answer your question later on in the workshop. Is that okay?
Question? What do you mean?
We'll try and answer this, address what you're trying to do later on in the workshop.
Oh, sure.
Probably,
sure. Somebody asked me why I'm here. So
no, I did. That was me.
Yeah. And Paul Kaplan, welcome. Right now we're asking everybody to introduce themselves and what their interest is in what they do.
Okay. Well, I'm a singer-songwriter, and I like to I use Audacity to record myself, but maybe there's something else I should do. And if you have tips on recording in general, I'd be happy to learn them.
Okay.
Bill, we didn't hear from you.
Hi, I'm Bill Miller. I'm kind of a beginner in this singing songwriting, but I would like to eventually be able to record. So I just wanted to listen about, I eventually have to get I think a better computer and maybe a interface system with a mic. So how would I just go about that? And, or I just listen and learn what I can get from what everybody else is saying.
And from just sort of participants here, Joel, where are you at in this whole process?
Well, I stumble by, I post some stuff, but I haven't been posting a lot, and I've been unsure about my tech savvy. I don't have a Mac, so I'm not going to be using GarageBand. And like Paul, He probably knows a lot more about Audacity than I do. I tinker with it. You know, I could download an audio track from a popular song and write a parody and kind of glue it together as if I know how to play an instrument, you know, sort of like that. And then I post other.
Do you play an instrument?
Oh, yes. Some people think I do.
Play guitar and stuff?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I think maybe we should get started. Prior to this, Ken was kind enough to make a video, in which he talks about how to make a good recording of vocal and guitar. And for those of us like Sandy who play instruments other than guitar, much of what he says would apply to ukulele or banjo or any other instrument that you're choosing to record.
I play drums as well, so.
Very good, very good. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up a video. I'm going to share my screen and the audio from my screen, and I'm going to try and play.
Can I just say a couple words? You can play my video first here, Steve?
Yeah, your video's first. So yeah,
okay,
go ahead.
So
and
maybe I'll
introduce
just give a couple words just to sort of, and I don't know if we have the option of fast forwarding through any of it or not, but again, it's if this is, you know, this may be more advanced than what you folks want to know. I'm not really sure. You know, we're trying to do something where we could actually show the stuff happening in process, but you know, and maybe the computer questions are as relevant as, you know, where to put a microphone on an acoustic guitar. I'm not sure, but this is so in there I say, and we'll sync this up later because I'm recording onto a digital audio workstation, and it could have been Audacity, but it happened to be a program called Digital Performer, but could have been Pro Tools, it could have been Logic. You know, there's lots of things out there of the, you know, what we call DAW, or a digital audio workstation. And Audacity, I believe, is open sourced, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought, which is great. And I've used it a little bit. So anyway, yeah. So I'll say, you know, here I'm going to play the guitar and voice, and then you'll actually hear it'll switch from my little webcam mic to the recorded audio at that point in the video. So yeah.
Ken,
so why don't you roll it? Yes.
Can I ask a question quickly, Ken?
Sure.
Is there a reason why you don't use Audacity more? Is there
Well,
something about the other
the
better?
program I have is significantly more sophisticated, and so because I'm doing this professionally,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm recording, you know, making albums as a living for lots of other artists. So I'm recording every week. I'm recording stuff at a professional level.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is my home studio, but you can see, you know, it's not your typical home, you know, and some of the equipment there is worth thousands of dollars. I didn't use that in the video, you know, I you know, used a much more sort of neutral location, but the basic principles, you know, how do you get a good sound on a guitar and a voice and things like that, you know, the little tips. Hopefully you'll find it useful, and if not, please let me know.
Yeah, to add on to what Ken said, I think you'll find if you do this a lot that Audacity is, you can do pretty much anything you can do with a more capable system, but it's not a productivity tool like Pro Tools or Logic in that. And you're ending up doing a lot of things by hand, which take longer, but the advantage is it's free. So, and it's good. So,
so when you
And I
say
love the open
not
source concept.
productivity tool, you mean You just mean that it's less efficient. It takes longer.
Yeah, and there's things that you can't do on Audacity that you can, or at least not as elegantly as you can do on a
Yeah.
professional system.
Real
Right.
quick, sorry to interrupt. I do want to add that Pro Tools is industry standard when it comes to mixing and mastering your songs, especially mixing. That's what the industry. I mean, that's what most people use to track vocals and mix and all that.
Dilson, I'm concerned with learning curve. How long does it take actually to become decent with beyond Audacity software?
Well, I mean, that depends on how committed are you really. It varies really. If you're the type of person that wants to look up tutorials on YouTube every single day, which I recommend, YouTube is there's a lot of things on YouTube. So it all depends on how committed you are to really learning that software. All right, we should move on to this video, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, can everybody see Ken's smiling face?
No,
Well,
he's
not-
not smiling in that picture.
Not quite smiling, but here goes.
I'm in Ken Whiteley, and I want to share some just a few little tips about recording vocals and guitar. And really, before I even get into any of the technical stuff, I just want to say that it's about getting your music across. So first of all, you want to make sure your guitar's tuned up. You want to make sure that you know your lyrics. You know, if not, have them written in a nice big font or whatever you need so you can read them. And you know, just be ready before you record, whatever it is. And that's the second thing I just want to say is that it's always kind of important to know what your intention is. And if your intention is to just put down a good demo, that's great. That's one kind of set of parameters. And if your intention is to have something that you can release commercially, then that you want to sort of set the bar a little bit higher, really. You know, with the demo, you just want to make sure the lyrics are clear, the melody's clear, you can hear the guitar chords, etc. But if you're actually going to try and make usable tracks for recording, then this is that's what's going to be my focus here right now. So you can see right now I've got this little small diaphragm condenser mic. That's what we call these. So this is actually the classic Neumann KM84, which was one of the original small diaphragm microphones that is a classic for this. And a smaller diaphragm, that's the little part that actually is going to vibrate to the whatever the sound source is, in this case my guitar. The smaller the diaphragm and the thinner the diaphragm, the faster it can move back and forth. So the more transients, the more detail it can get. And a condenser mic means that it is a powered mic. So there's actually a little bit of charge going across that capsule. So to record, I'm using for this little session here, I'm using this Focusrite. This is not an expensive box. It's like under $200 American, and it's got 2 channels, inputs, a headphone output, and it's got this little button right here, which you can see I hope you can see is kind of red. That's engaged, and that indicates that the phantom power is on. So the phantom power is what's powering, the 48 volts that this microphone and this microphone want to see. Now, here I've got a what we would call a large diaphragm condenser mic, which is great if you can get something that for your vocals. This is a different set of needs than what we want. We want something that's really going to capture the full range, and you can use a large diaphragm mic on your guitar, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if all you've got is your old friendly Shure 58, you know, especially if you're just recording it for demos, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But obviously, if you are going for something that you're going to go on, that's going to go on a record, if you can rent a good large diaphragm, you know, you don't have to go out and buy these. How many times you're going to be making an actual record? You know, you can use your 58 or whatever you've got for your demos, and then splurge a little bit. You know, I always remember one recording workshop I was at, and there's a famous Nashville producer and engineer, Bill Vaughan Dick, and when someone said, well, I just bought these 2 mics and a good preamp and all this stuff, and you know, and what should I do next? And Bill said, take them back. You know, so it's just to warn you that once you get into acquiring gear, it's a slippery slope, and so, you know, if you get into it and that's what you want to do, fine. But you've got to be careful, because it's going to take a lot of time and money to compete with a whole, you know, a full functioning you know, professional recording studio. But with a good small diaphragm condenser mic and a good large diaphragm condenser mic, you can make really good sounding recordings. So I've got this. So you can see I've got a pop screen. We used to just use a nylon stocking wrapped around a bent out coat hanger for these to when we discovered, oh, you could just, you know, this is we'll stop, you know, when you have peas and these, and you can just feel the wind blowing, and that actually, especially a sensitive condenser mic, will create pops in your vocal mic. Sometimes it'll even make pops on a guitar mic. It's incredible how much air actually comes out with some of these big syllables, P's and B's. And so now, anyway, this is something that you can buy. You know, they aren't expensive. Or you could just do the old nylon stocking and coat hanger thing if you want to. That still totally works. And so I've got my Focusrite, and this is, you know, this is going to be something that's totally usable. I'm not using any compression or EQ going in, and I want to be just really careful with my levels so that I don't make things too hot, because the one thing that is a real drag is when you get a great performance and then you discover it's distorted. So I've actually got my, you know, I've got the guitar set, you know, it's like below the 12 o'clock position on this, and the vocal is even a little lower, because I know my own dynamic range. And this is also a tip for when you're singing, if it doesn't distract you from your performance. You know, like, so when you get to you know, if you're singing the normal part and you're this far away. So right now, that screen is, I got my little tape measure here. It's about 3 inches from the diaphragm, and I'm going to be another 6 inches. So I'm about 9 inches. So 9 inches from the microphone, which when you're recording guitar and vocals is not a bad place to be. You want to be a little bit closer than you would be if you're just overdubbing a vocal. You know, because again, you want to minimize the bleed between these two sound sources, the guitar and the voice. And you can see I've got this small diaphragm condenser pointing downwards, so it's pointing away from my vocal. And so it's kind of rejecting the stuff that's at right angles, so it's going to reject a little more of my vocal. And I'm going to put it facing almost directly above about the 15th fret. You know, if this was not a cutaway, this would be about where the body joins, you know, a 15 fret neck guitar. You don't want, generally speaking, you do not want to have your guitar mic right in front of the hole, because that's going to pick up too much low end information. You want to hear the strings ringing. You want to hear the body, but not too much. Now, in a minute, I'm going to show you how to do a little bit. If you can overdub your vocals, that opens up a whole new range of things. So there's no processing going down. I'm set my levels kind of conservatively, and that'll be the only thing we want to do conservative. No, just kidding. But so the yeah, I want to be careful. I don't overload any of this stuff. And again, when I'm singing, if I sing a loud part, I can then move back. I can use proximity, because the closer you get to the sound source, the proximity effect is going to boost the low frequency information, the low end. So there's times when you want to use that. So it's like if I'm saying, really go really low at the end, then I'll move right in for that low note at the end, and just to give it a fighting chance. So I'll just record a little bit of this. I've got my little laptop set up here, and so I'll just hit play and record there. And well, if you see me stumble, don't just stand and look on. Reach on out now, sister. Give your hands to struggle. Give your hands to struggle. Give your hands to struggle. You get the idea, okay. So now I want to show you one other little special tip. I'll turn off my DAW, and if I was recording the whole song for actual use, even as a demo, I'd want to make sure, I might do that much first and just listen to it, make sure I didn't have any overloads or anything like that, and then go and do the final performance. Because when you want to actually be able to give her, as they say, you want to be able to give a performance when you're recording, and whether that's a demo, whatever it is, you want to be able to do that. So if I'm not recording vocals and guitar at the same time, if I know the guitar part, I know I'm a pretty solid guitar player, I'm just going to move this right out of the way now. And what I know is going to sound better is if I can record the guitar in stereo. So here now I'm going to move this other mic up into position, and this is also a small diaphragm condenser mic, and I wanted to show you this. This is a Rode microphone made in Australia. The Neumann this is the 185, which is the hypercardioid, an even tighter pattern I could have used. They sound great. And also I want to say that there are lots of ways to do this. It's not just one way. But this is kind of a go-to thing that I would use. I know it's going to work, right? So I've got two, and so this is so much cheaper than the original Neumann. And is it as good as the original Neumann? Not quite, but does it sound pretty good? It sounds excellent. So something like this is a lot more affordable, and that's a good thing, right? So I have no problems actually using these in the studio, and so now I want to position my guitar so that the two mics, and we use what's called the 3-to-1 rule. And here, so now I'm not going to be singing, so I can go a little farther away from the guitar, and you want the distance between. You want to use what's called a 3-to-1 ratio. So again, I'll get out my little tape measure. So if the microphones are, so the mics are about, say, 10 inches from the guitar. So I want to be about I could either be 3 1/3 inches apart. So I could put the two microphones close together like that, and this is sort of simulates in some ways, and they're sort of angled slightly away from each other. So I'll keep them at about 3, a little closer, and so that would be one way to go compared to the 10 inches from the guitar. Or the other way to go would be to have the microphones 3 times as far apart from each other, and then sort of put this up like that. So these are now 15 inches away. So I'm going to get in a little tighter to the guitar, and we'll see how that works. I'll change out. I'm going to turn off the phantom power, per minute. Let that drain down a little bit before I switch out my microphones. Plug in the other one and turn the phantom power back on. And now I want to have them sort of matching up about in level. And let's see how this goes here. Take that out of record and put the other guitar in record. And look at my audio monitors there. So this is a little hotter. Get them. You want to get these both as close as you can, but I'm going to record them on 2 separate tracks. Okay, because that gives me a lot more options in terms of how I EQ them. And Dilson's going to be showing you a whole bunch of EQ tricks later. So that's also good. So I don't want them too hot. Okay, and then I'll record some of this guitar, and later I'll get a chance. I'll play you back some of what I've actually recorded with all of this. Okay, so here I go, and and recording just the guitar part, I can put a little more, I can put my attention just on the guitar part. I can do little fancy things, you know, whatever. And it gives me a lot more options. And you'll hear the sound of just the 2 mics sounds good, and you can do a lot with that. And lots of records were made with just a mono recording the guitar. But once you put it in stereo, you can put the voice up the middle, pan the 2 guitars, and all of a sudden you have a much bigger stereo image. And you have the opportunity to, you know, do different passes of your vocal, and that's for most people that's a good thing. Some people will give their best performance when they're just playing and singing, because that's what they always do, you know. So you've got to find out what's right for you. That's the most important thing, and there's not one way to do it. There's so many ways to do it. So anyway, that's probably way more than you need right now, but I hope it helps you get started. There was my smile right at the end there. Yeah, so
Okay,
feel free to open up if you've got Joel, you've got a question.
Okay, I'm muted. Yeah, my question is, so when you switch to having 2 mics, did you take the audio part out? So you're doing 2 guitars at a time? You can't do the 2 guitars and the mic and the vocal at the same time? I noticed you had 2 and you had 3.
So you could do that if you have a more sophisticated interface. So I'm assuming that you people are working with something that is like a 2-channel interface, which are the, you know, the sort of, which is the kind of thing that's going to give you something of good enough quality that it actually is, you know, create tracks that will be good enough to actually commercially release. But it's kind of the entry level of that level, if you know what I mean. Like you could go to a more sophisticated universal audio, you know, interface, or you know, I mean, there's, you know, once you get into it, then there's lots of things, you know, and you can, I mean, in the studio, and you know, in my rack over here, you know, I mean, I have 32 tracks, so you know, I could be recording 32 tracks simultaneously. You know, if you're recording a whole band and a horn section all at once, you know, sometimes you'll be using all of it. But I was working on the assumption that you'd be using, you know, a good quality, but not, you know, keeping it within a sort of a home setup budget. So in that situation, you only have 2 tracks.
So I'm to understand that they were both microphones. There was no vocal when you were doing the two mics. Is that right?
So when I'm just recording the stereo guitar, then I'm not singing because I only have two channels on the interface.
Yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
His vocal was coming from the camera, if I'm not mistaken. When he was talking, he was.
When I'm talking, that's just coming from a webcam.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Logitech webcam.
Yeah, and Joel, we should mention that that when Ken switched from miking his guitar, he unplugged the large diaphragm and plugged in the second small diaphragm. So that's probably what you're referring to. And the idea is that there's other advantages to recording the vocals separate, in that then they're totally isolated. You can EQ them separately. And like Ken said, he could focus on his performance and do much more fancy things with the guitar.
Fancy's not always better. You know, you also have to be careful, and you have to also be realistic about what your comfort level is. Because if you always just sing and play guitar, and that's what you do, or banjo or ukulele or whatever it may happen to be, then doing it separately, your timing may not be right. You know, you may get out of sync. You may slow down a little bit or speed up a little bit or whatever, you know. So, I mean, even, you know, I did 4 albums with Tom Paxson, you know, who's a consummate professional, but I learned with Tom, you know, that he is, he tends to give his best vocal performance live off the floor, as we say, live with the other musicians. That's how he performs best. He gives you a performance in that moment. He's sort of channeling into that. And then if he just plays guitar, he's totally capable of, you know, especially if there's a bass player and another guitar player or something like that on the bed track of what we call it, you know, he's quite capable of keeping time. But the vocal, he can do a good vocal. I don't want to, I'm not in any way dissing Tom, but I'm just saying more often than not, his best vocal will be when he's doing it live as a complete performance. So you have to learn that for yourself. You have to learn, but lots of other, in fact, I would say that's more uncommon. I would say more people, especially if they have someone to work with who can give them feedback and say, yeah, I think you've got to watch that high note. You're actually going sharp on the high note. So just be careful of that, you know, and your phrasing when you get to this line, you know, let's try it again. You know, if you've got someone who's giving you feedback and you're overdubbing a vocal, then you're able to, for most people, solicit and elicit from yourself an even more heartfelt and convincing vocal. Ruby.
Here, let me. That was really amazing. And one of the things also that I'm trying to get better at technology, to be on a tech team for a couple of festivals that I'm looking at. So besides my own personal stuff, that's really, really helpful. A question that occurs to me about the pop screen and instruments other than vocals or strings, because I remember when we recorded for in a recording studio, and I was the vocalist then, there was that kind of screen. So does that happen for, well, percussion, for drums, for example? And do you need some sort of pop filter for other instruments?
No, I mean, once in a blue moon, and usually you would change it, like say with certain kinds of flutes, you know, from other cultures that are putting out a lot of wind. But in that situation, you probably are just going to move where the microphone is positioned relative to that, you know, and that's just a general tip for everybody, you know, is to find out what works with what, and the beauty of recording at home is that you're not paying $100 an hour for studio time. And so you have time to experiment a little bit and find what works better for you. And maybe your guitar sounds a little bit better. You like it better when the mic is at the 14th fret, or it's a little closer to the hole. But I can say right now, generally, it's not going to sound better right on the hole, right? But you might find a sweet spot that's just slightly different for your particular instrument, or that you like.
So for a drum, you would just try it a few times, thinking about
liking drums is a whole other topic. I mean,
because there's less wind. There's less wind.
Yeah. And you need microphones that can handle a very high sound pressure level, because, so that's why with all of the expensive microphones I have, I will still use a Shure 57 on a snare drum, because I want to get the mic in nice and close in a kit, and so that's going to be getting a sound pressure level of 130 dB, 100 or more. If it's a real hard hitter, and that's going to break up at the capsule if the mic can't take it. So you're going to use a dynamic mic for that.
I wanted to add to that. Pop filters are I mean, the sole purpose of it is just to block out what we call plosives, right? The poof and the bees.
It's great.
Yeah, what is plosive about guitars, for example?
Right, exactly. Because when we say a P or B, we're literally like a flute blowing out air. So it's meant to like block that out pretty much.
Right, but what does that have to do with guitars is my question.
You wouldn't use a pop filter on the guitar.
Oh, all right.
But if somebody is a really loud popper of P's and they're playing guitar and singing at the same time, sometimes you'll even get the pop on the guitar mic. Not usually.
Oh, okay, I get it. Thank you.
Shannon, did you have a question? And Bill has a question. So, Bill, go ahead.
I did have a quick question. Yeah. I mean, it was just a follow up to the one about recording with, can you just, not have separate tracks, but like the idea of just like if you're used to performing with a single mic format, like a condenser mic. I know some of those condenser mics have something. Some of them have more than just phantom power, or is it always just phantom power, like the Rode? And others, it seems like they have a whole intricate box that seems to be more than phantom power.
Right.
So what do you have to do differently with that interface? Is there?
Okay, so that's not an interface, but some microphones actually have a vacuum tube inside them. And so they have a separate power supply for the vacuum tube.
Oh, okay.
And so if you see a fancy mic that is connected to a power supply, and then the mic cable goes out of the power supply into your interface or whatever, that's because it's a tube mic. And there's, I could talk microphones for the next several hours, but
right.
It was more the question about if you want to replicate that single mic performance style that you normally would do, bluegrass style, whatever, banjo and loud instrument for this same purpose. It's just basically the same, and you would just use the vacuum power supply. Then you would go to the interface, and it would just but it would be of course on one track, and but it should work just the same way as it would in a live setting.
Basically, that's true. And two other things I just want to quickly throw in here. One is that another nice option for that whole group, several people or one mic, so first of all, it's going to be farther away, from the sound source. But so how you achieve your balance becomes critical at that point. And so it's not just as simple as putting up one microphone. There were some great jazz recordings, made on one microphone, classic jazz recordings from the 1920s that are made on one ribbon mic. But Louis Arm, you talk, the talking about, some of those people talking about those recording sessions, they spent 6 hours getting the balance before they got the take.
Okay.
Mahogany Hall Stomp, which is, and it sounds like, oh, it's so spontaneous, and they're just, and Louis Armstrong talking to his biographers, complaining about, we spent so many hours to get the balance just right with all those.
The backstory.
That's right. So, but yeah, can you do it? Absolutely, you can. But
Thank you.
If I could, I'd like to follow up on Ruby's question a little bit, because she was talking about live. And I think in live, you don't see a lot of pop screens, because more typically people are going to, for vocals, use something with a screen built in and a dynamic mic. And dynamic mics aren't going to pick up everything like a condenser mic does. So usually, unless you're in a really quiet concert situation, like in a church or a concert hall, you wouldn't use a condenser mic in a live, like, festival situation where everything's going to be picked up by that condenser mic. So that's something to think about too, as you're talking about getting involved with your organization.
Yeah. Bill, do you have a pressing question here? Yeah, we want to get on to Dilson's presentation.
Yes.
Soon, but...
I could
go
just,
ahead, Bill.
well, just quickly, the guitar pickups, are those just for amplification, or do they ever get plugged into the interface?
You can do that, and it depends. Again, it depends on what, there's both artistic and sonic dimensions to that choice about recording a pickup as well. So, for example, if I was recording and I only had one mic and I was going to record just a guitar track, I probably would track, the pickup on an acoustic guitar, even though I'm not particularly a fan of, most pickups in an acoustic guitar. I have a $5,000 acoustic guitar and a $180 pickup in there. And there's a reason why the pickup sounds a lot more like $180 than the $5,000 that the guitar sounds like. So I would rather have a condenser mic that's going to really much more accurately reflect it. And in fact, I'll take that little Rode mic. So I'm not taking something super expensive, but I'll take that to festivals. But it depends. If you've got a professional sound crew that knows what they're doing, and you say, I don't need this in the monitor, I'll be fine in the monitor, so I'm not going to get feedback, you can use it in live settings. But I've also had disaster happen at festivals where I've taken it to the condenser. The workshop stage person is not a professional sound person, doesn't, they have a sort of a clue what they're doing, but they're not a professional, right? And then it's like the concert is a disaster because, there's feedback the whole time and they don't know how to deal with it. But there's other situations where using a pickup, like sometimes if you want to get like weird delays off your guitar is an effect, or distortion, or those kinds of sensibilities that are artistic decisions, then having a delay track is often great. And so if you're recording your voice and guitar and you have more than, you have choices there, then there could be a reason why you would want to use the DI and not the mic.
Okay. Hey, thank you.
I will say that I've had good results mixing on recordings, mixing the pickup from the guitar in low with the actual condenser mic. And that's something you can experiment with, and that many people have done that with some good result.
Dilson, over to you.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm going to be talking about equalizers, which is also known as EQs. Generally, you would use an EQ to either boost specific frequencies, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a few, or take away some frequencies, and knowing how to manipulate your actual sound. So let's say you've recorded something on your track, right? It's already tracked. You want to, and you notice that maybe it's a bit boomy, right? It's a little low end. There's a lot of low end going on, or maybe it's too high. You would normally put an EQ on there just to adjust the sound. So you would use an EQ to manipulate whatever you have recorded onto your track already. Steve, I'm trying to share my screen right now, so if you could swing that power over. Okay, great. So this is, I'm going to show you guys generally what an EQ looks like. Okay, I know this looks really complicated, but I promise you it's not. And this is basically what we're here for, to break this stuff down for you, right? So this is what is the more commonly used EQ in Pro Tools, and it's called the 7-band EQ. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here, but let's focus on this graph for a second, right? Vertically, what we have up here, this is gain, pretty much. Think of it as volume or amplitude, right? That's the vertical side of things. Horizontally, what we have here are frequencies, also known as hertz, also known as cycles per second. We're not really gonna, I don't want to get into too much what exactly a frequency is. You know, we're not talking about physics here. This is music. But if you do have other questions about that, I mean, feel free to ask them, or if you want more clarity on that, feel free to ask it. But just think of this horizontal line as this wide spectrum of sound, right? Any little track, any little recording that you have has all these wide ranges of sound. So starting from the left side, you have the more low-endy sounding, the more low-end sound of your track, right, or of your recording. Moving toward that's the low mids. This is the mids, high mids, leading up to your highs, pretty much. And this is called the 7-band EQ because they are 7 bands: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Each band is pretty much associated, or each of these little dots are associated with these bands right here. So the red is your red, orange is orange, so on and so forth. And just like I said earlier, low frequencies, right? That's your red, starting here. Low mid, that's your orange. Middle frequencies, right in the middle. High mids here, and high frequencies are here. So let's just focus on these right now. I have a Pro Tools session here to share for y'all. Oh, what happened? Okay, let's share that again. So there's a lot of tracks here. There's a lot of stuff going on, but we're just gonna focus on this rhythm track, right? So I have a, well, let's listen to what the whole thing sounds like first. All right, can you guys hear that? It sounds good? Thumbs up? Yeah? Okay, great. So I wanna focus on this rhythm guitar that I have here. So I'm gonna solo it. I'm gonna press the S right here, that solo button. Click on that, and that's my guitar. So, I mean, just off of the first listen, to me, it sounds very boomy. It sounds very low-endy. I want a bit more clarity. I want a bit more higher frequencies involved, or just take out the lows, right? So I know I want an EQ on this. So I go to my inserts, which is the first box right here. Click on that. Click on plugin. I'm trying to get my EQ plugin, so I go to EQ. There's a shitload of plugins here, but we're gonna focus on EQ3 7-band EQ, right? That's the EQ that I just showed you guys. Okay, and just so you guys could get a better understanding of what these frequencies sound like, I'm just gonna bring up my lows. You hear that difference? I'm gonna bring up my highs. Okay, so those are lows and highs pretty much. Okay, so by default, your low frequency, your your LF right here, your red band, your low frequency band, and your highs, they have, if you increase the gain knob is right here. Let me go back to this image because it's zoomed in. This is your gain, which is your vertical. This is your frequency, which is your horizontal. You have the option to move it left and right. And we'll focus on this Q thing a bit later. But let's just focus on these two right now, right? Gain and frequency, which is what we just talked about. Go to my Pro Tools session. So if I click on this gain knob and turn it clockwise, it increases this band. So I'm increasing the volume on this low frequency band. If I turn it counterclockwise, I'm bringing it down, right? So if I bring this all the way down, I'm gonna bring it up now. Maybe do this. Yeah. There's a big difference between that and this, right? Okay. So turning the frequency knob clockwise will also move it higher. So if I bring this up and I turn my frequency knob to the right clockwise, the cutoff point is going to be at a higher frequency. So by default, if I go back to this image, my low frequency knob is at 100 hertz. As you could see on the graph, it starts at 100, right? If I move it clockwise, it increases to, oh, wrong, sorry. This is from my hip hop workshop. Wow, how do I go back? Let me get this out of here. Oh man, sorry. Escape. Well, let me stop sharing and I'll go back here. Okay. So going back here, what was I talking about? All right, my hertz are here, my gain is there. Ooh, this is feedback app. Can someone be muted, please? Or everyone be muted? Damn, I forgot what I was saying. Okay, anyways. So let's talk about this Q knob for a second. The Q knob. So this type of, I did it again. Wow. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So this type of filtering that I have on this Pro Tools track, or this shape, I should say, is called shelving filtering. That type of shape. This is shelving or shelf filter, which is the what's clicked right here. If I click on this one right there, that's called a bell, which is what we most commonly use when we EQ because we want to focus on a specific frequency. Now, the space in between, I also have the option to do this. I could click on each band and kind of move them around, right? And move them wherever I want. So if I want the space in between from this starting point to that starting point, it's called bandwidth, also known as Q. If I want that space to be a lot more thinner, I bring up this Q knob and this happens, right? And the purpose of this is to zero in on a specific frequency, right? Which I'll get into why that's important. So once again, I'm gonna just have everything to its normal setting. I'm gonna change this knob right here to go to bell, increase my gain, right? So that's the bell filtering, and this is the shelving. Shelving pretty much increases all of your frequencies starting from 0 all the way up to your cutoff point. So all of that is being increased. If I don't want that, I go to my bell function because that I'm trying to listen to a specific frequency, right? So I increase my gain. Let's say I want that tighter. I go to my Q function right here and bring that up clockwise and zero in on that frequency. I want to stop here just because I'm pretty sure I have questions. Something's telling me I have questions on EQs right now. So is there anything that people want a bit more clarity on, or should I keep going? Does this make sense? And do you see why it's important in some way? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go back to my Pro Tools session, right? So people generally use EQs again just to manipulate sound. So if based on what we learned, I use a different method to take out the boomy stuff. This is called a high pass filter. We're not gonna get into that though. That's what I would use to cut off the boominess that I personally don't like from this guitar recording that I have here. But based on what we learned, if we want the low end stuff to be out of this guitar, I'm gonna take my shelving filter option right there, click, bring down the gain, bring down the gain, and that sounds at least a bit cleaner. Let me bring up this frequency stuff. I feel like more lows need to be cut off, right? So let me change the cutoff point at, let's say 100 and what's that, 63 hertz, something like that. I do want to add, sorry, I forgot to mention, every single DAW has an EQ. Whether you're using Pro Tools, Audacity, FL Studio, GarageBand, every single DAW has an EQ. It's that important. If your DAW doesn't have an EQ, that's a red flag. That's a huge red flag. So yeah, this is what we call a bypass button. Bypass, just think of it as an on and off button, and we toggle back and forth just to see the difference in sound. So I'm going to turn this off, bypass, just to hear what it sounded like originally. And now I'm going to turn it on just to see what it sounds like now in a few seconds. Now, sounds a bit cleaner, doesn't it? Less low endy. Now let's listen to it with the rest of the track. Now this is it bypassed. Off. One last thing that I want to talk about is what I think is called sweeping. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's called sweeping. This is basically when you, if I have this track recorded on already, right? I want to figure out if there are any nasty frequencies that I personally want to take out, and you'll see what I mean by that. So in order to go about that, let's say I want to start on my mid frequencies. Bring up the gain all the way up. Turn this clockwise, and now it's really thin. So I'm going to press play. I'm sorry, I'm going to solo this first. And I'm going to sweep, looking for things that are just not right. You hear that? That's like a weird woo type of sound. We don't want that. So now that it's all the way up, we're going to bring that down, and that automatically takes it out. Now, in some cases, you don't want to take it all out. Like this is not that dramatic, so I'm just probably going to leave like probably that right there. And it's very subtle. You can't really hear that much of a difference, but it does in terms of mixing, in terms of gain, in terms of your tracks clipping, it does make a difference. So I'm going to now do the same thing on the high mid frequency band. Increase my gain all the way up. Bring the Q all the way up, the bandwidth, to make it really tight, and I'm gonna look for those frequencies again. That doesn't make, and this would work best if you guys have like headphones on for sure. You hear that twangy? We don't want that, so we take that out. That's also very important for vocals, right? I have a vocal right here, for instance. That applies to vocals as well. Let's see what this sounds like. Me voy, me voy, me voy. Oh, this is a Spanish song I was working on. Plugin, EQ. I'm going to insert my EQ on there. And I'm going to solo this. Oh, it's already soloed. And I'm going to look for, again, for those nasty, which I'm pretty sure would be a lot more present here.
Me voy, me voy, me voy.
Ooh, something here.
Me voy, me voy, me voy. Me voy, me voy, me voy.
Right there.
Me voy, me voy. Me voy, me voy, me voy.
I'm going to keep doing that. Increase my gain, increase the Q. I'm going to keep looking for them.
Me voy,
Ooh.
me voy, me voy. Me voy.
That little whistle sound, do you hear that?
Me voy, me voy, me voy.
I'm going to bring my gain down. I want that to be a bit more dramatic, so I'm going to take more of that out.
Me voy, me voy.
Let's start here. Why not low? I feel like there's a lot of stuff here, maybe.
Me voy, me voy, me voy.
Ooh, how about that?
Me voy, me voy, me voy. Me voy, me voy.
Wow, that's terrible. So we want that to be all the way out, or maybe just something like that. In case you didn't hear it, let me bring it up again. It's pretty present though.
Me voy, me voy, me voy.
That ooh, that I guess feedbacky type of sound. We don't want that, so we taking that out. And that again, that makes a difference because we don't want your tracks to clip. We don't want it to pass a certain fixed line of amplitude. And if we have that combined with other tracks that are recorded, and it's bound to clip. So those little things make a difference. I'm gonna stop right here. See if there's any questions, and if there's not, we could hand that over to Steve. Was that too complicated, or was that? Let's start with Paul and then Steve.
Yeah, what I'm not quite getting is you seem to have like a whole track of the rhythm guitar, and you were EQing the whole thing. If you're just going to EQ like a second because there's a glitch or something, I didn't see how you would do that. To zero in, would you have to just highlight that?
So what exactly would you be? It depends on what exactly you want altered from that little second. Are we talking like volume, or are we talking just like sound wise?
Let's say there was just a strange sound you wanted to get rid of.
Okay, that's a bit more complicated, but there's this thing called audio suite, or automation, where you would literally just focus on that one little part.
But essentially, you're EQing like a whole track or a whole big section.
Right. That's like the point of. I mean, this is more of a general mixing thing. Like, okay,
Right.
this is what's wrong throughout the entire track for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Not really like a specific little. Oh,
right. Got it.
Unless like, well, yeah, it kind of depends on what you're doing. Like you don't want to, if that little, you don't want to just focus on that little thing if it means the entire track is going to be altered by it, unless it won't make that much of a difference. So it depends on every scenario, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay.
And if there is a real bit of problem audio in a particular place, like you banged the microphone at that 1 second or something like that, then at that point, and again, this is where the advantage of having recorded things so cleanly and separately, you have then the option of replacing, the chord, that just that one beat, and you find where that beat happens somewhere else in the song, and you fly that in over top of the problem piece, if it's that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Like,
but the EQ that Dilson's talking about is how to make that whole track sit with all the other tracks as well. Because like if I may say, Dilson, if I can jump in here,
go ahead.
Like with where there's a lot going on, like it totally makes sense to sweep out a lot of that low frequency information, because you want to make room for other low frequency sounds, because it's all going to be cumulative. And it's a sort of upper mid-range content of the guitar that you want to hear. You want to hear the sound of the chords, but you don't want it conflicting with the congas and stuff. But if you're just solo and acoustic guitar, maybe you leave more. maybe you just use a sweep at 50, 60 hertz or something like that. You know, it depends, you know, on the situation. But the more complex your track is, the more you have to pay attention to all these details because they all have to work together.
And at that point, I would just re-record it, or you know, if it's really like there are sometimes, yeah, there's sometimes where something is so just brash or just too, I'm just like I can't work with this. I try and it's just like it's terrible, so I have to re-record it. You have the option of, I think every session should have multiple takes actually, you know, just so you could kind of play around and cut and paste literally, right? So if let's say I share my screen again just so you guys could see. In this song, for instance, this is basically my rhythm. It doesn't really change until here, right? Like, I'm basically doing that for a while. So if let's say this fourth chord right here, there's like a weird buzzing, or let's say, no, never mind. I duplicate that, for instance, right? So that's Command D or Control D if you're using a PC. So I duplicate that. Right. Let's say there's something wrong with, no, I'm sorry. Let me scratch all of that. Let's say, sorry. Let's say, for instance, I recorded all of this cleanly, right? This is my was 8 bars, I believe, something like that. And in this specific chord, it's a little off. I could literally just copy and paste, command, click right onto that. And that would be inserted right there. That will fix my problem. I know Beethoven is probably rolling over in his grave right now because we're just like making, you know, music is very, I guess, digital now in that sense of just like we have the option to do that now. So you could do that if you have a certain, like if you just have this going over like a couple bars, you could just take copy and paste, you know, unless you have different alterations in your guitar part, then it kind of, that might make it different. You might have to re-record at that point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Steve.
Yeah, that was very fascinating, the sweep and getting rid of problem frequencies and ringing frequencies and the whole thing. Do you generally sometimes overlay 2 different EQ plugins for a track, one to get rid of problem frequencies and notch filter them out like you did, and another one just to shape the general overall tone?
That's usually what I do actually. Like the first one, the first insert, my first insert will be that. Let's say I do this, you know, I have that going on. I just put another EQ right after that and focus more on what I want to add now. Like, oh, I like this right here. I like this boosted a little bit. Maybe I want some highs. Let me increase that just a tad, you know? Like this would be more tone, like adding tones. This would be more taking out that nasty stuff that we don't want. And also each EQ has, they add their own harmonics, right? So sometimes I would just add an EQ that I really like the tone of it. It will add a certain quality and taste to it. Especially from actual hardware stuff, not really digital plugins. Those have more natural sounds that you know. But this I would definitely go with 2. Sometimes even more, depending on what I really need. You know. You don't want to take out too much though. You have to be very cautious about taking out, because sometimes you could take out too much and it just sounds weird at that point. You know. Is there any more questions before we move on to Steve? No more questions. Okay, Steve, take it away.
Well, I'm just going to leave it up for the group. It's like I was going to talk about, I made a little video talking about how to interface a keyboard into your recording setup and how you might want to do that. What I don't get a sense of is if there's anybody that's keyboard oriented that would be interested in that part of the presentation. So I guess what I'm looking for is, because I think we can go in a couple different directions. We can go more to people's general questions, or I could roll my video where I might be preaching to the choir that's not here. Um, so yes, Ruby.
I still have the questions about, I think, the more the simpler stuff that is of more present concern to me right now, like different downloads that I can record from and then ship them to somebody else to work on it.
Mhm.
And if we're going to get there, I'd be interested. There are several programs that have been mentioned, so I don't know how to use any of them. And if that's too simple for the issue right now, then that's okay. But that's what I'm specifically interested in figuring out right now.
Well, Ruby, it sounds to me that you're interested in participating in some of these like group videos that people make where they no, that's not it.
There's that too, but there's the group audio, and it's just, well, record to this click track, and listen to the band to the tune, record it at home and send it in to us. So I want to have a good quality that I'm sending into them. I really don't know how to, there's Audacity. I don't really know how to do that.
So Ruby,
and good quality.
Ruby, when you say a click track, are you talking about a click track, or are you talking about a pre-recorded instrumental track?
Both.
So a click track where it's just like a metronomic type thing? That's what a click track means, not.
But both of those things.
So you're supposed to just record a vocal without any pitch reference?
This would be with my drums. This whole thing is instrumental.
Okay.
It's a honk tune.
And how would you be recording your drums? What do you have to record drums with?
That's the question. I have a brand new laptop. The old one was.
Do you have any microphones?
I have no, actually not. Well, yeah, I do. But it's also recording vocals for my 90-person chorus.
But not at the same time as you're recording the drums?
Different things. That's what I said. There were two or three different issues.
But I'm just trying to find out, if you're recording your drums, what would you use do you have microphones to pick up the sound source? Or are you just depending on
all I have is a vocal mic.
A single 58 type microphone type?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say personally, I think you should start with starting a nice little list of gear that you need. So it seems like you're at that stage where you would probably want to get an interface, right? Some microphones to mic up your drums or vocals and stuff like that. So like just getting a nice little list of certain microphones that you might need, buying an actual interface, and then after that, buying software to finally record your stuff into.
The other folks on the vocal track, there's 90 of us.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't need to be that fancy or that specific. And it probably doesn't need buying new stuff. Probably for the drum, it would, for that particular thing.
Well, you need to record, like your recording needs to go somewhere, right? So once you have your microphones, they need to go to your interface, which is also, think of it as a mixer, right? Where your mics go into. So that's what that is. And then once that the basic function of that is to convert it into digital format in order for it to go inside your computer, right? Once you have, I mean, and then at that point, that's when you will get your software. So if you're using Pro Tools, that's the software you're using to record all that stuff into.
So Audacity
That too.
wouldn't be like enough?
That, I mean, if that's what you're looking for, sure. I just think Pro Tools is, in my opinion, that's the best software to use. But if that's what you want to use, by all means, you have many
No, it's
options.
just that's just the only thing I've heard of, except that I'm hearing
Oh, I
here
see.
that there are better tools, and I'm,
For sure.
you know, because I'm also a solo vocalist, so
Mhm.
you know, I don't want to just leave it at the least, you know, at something that isn't top. So if it's, yeah, if I can do that, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, even if you use Audacity, I think that the key is that whatever track that is being sent to you that you're supposed to sync to, you need to load that into Audacity, and then you need to record on top of that. And you should have some kind of headphones, closed-in headphones, so that whatever you're listening to doesn't bleed into what you're recording, and the track that you're recording into is recording only you. And then you can later you know, send just that track to somebody else if they're putting everything together, or you know, there's a lot that you can do. But I think, like Dilson said, you need an interface. It doesn't have to be an expensive one, but you need something to plug your mic into that plugs into your computer, and that Audacity will let you record a track in sync with the track that someone sends you.
I have just a headset with a mic, and we tried that out. It's a new one. We tried that out like yesterday, and they were saying, "Hey, don't use it," because there was the distortion. I mean, it was a tinny sound with the mic, so I'm not going to use that. So I do have a headset, but can't use it.
Yeah, you need a higher quality mic than what comes with the headset, right? You need you need your Shure SM58, or you need something better.
And if you don't own it, borrow it. You know, like you don't go
Yeah.
buy it. I'm all in favor of, you know, not supporting big corporations, but you know, but you're going to need some kind of interface, and you're going to need some way to record it too, to be able to listen to the track and sing at the same time, or play at the same time and record what you're doing. So I would suggest that if you don't want to go buy it, fair enough, but you know, borrow it. Somebody else on the chat suggested, you know, an M audio box, which is, you know, roughly comparable to the Focusrite, you know, maybe not, you know, whatever. We don't need to get into the minutia of it, but it totally works. And anything like, you know, whatever you've got, it's about making it work.
And there's probably somebody on the chorus tech team that has that I can borrow. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
If you're going to do
Shannon
those
was just
kinds of
saying
projects,
something.
the only one thing I would advise everybody on the project do is don't cut the audio at the beginning. Start at the, you know, whatever they send you, send an entire track back that's all the way from the beginning. Don't trim anything, so that everything comes out in sync when you put it together.
Okay, I think Shannon had a question. I think I saw her hand raised.
Thank you.
No problem, Ruby. And if you have more questions, Ruby, feel free to email us. We'll be more than that, or me, or whoever, you know.
Thank you.
Shannon, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, but I don't really have any specific questions. I'm just taking it all in. I have a vague memory of doing a little bit with Pro Tools a long time ago. And I'm just about to get an interface. So, and it says that it comes with Pro Tools. The one that it's actually the one that Keith, it's the one that was shown earlier on the, that interface, that particular interface. And it seems like it comes with the Pro Tools, at least. And so I'm just really starting to get back into this. So I don't have it in front of me. I'm taking in what you've shown, and it's helpful. And I think, yeah, I didn't have a specific question, but I'm thank you for showing that.
No problem, Shannon. If you, I mean, since you're still in the early stages, and this goes for everybody, if you want more clarity on things, or you just don't know how to go about something, just go on YouTube. People, like, everything is on YouTube, and they'll show you. There's a lot of great people that'll show you step by step what you need to do and all that stuff. So
yeah, and it was the one Ken. It was actually the one Ken showed earlier. I can't remember the model, but it was that exact
the focus
model.
right. That's great.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great one.
Okay, good, thank you.
I should ask for a show of hands at this point. Is anybody interested in the part about how to interface a keyboard into your setup?
I think that'd be pretty cool to show. That's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not at that place yet, but like, this is being recorded for future, and I just really feel like I will want that, in the future. So that would be lovely too for me.
Yeah, I play keyboards as well, so that would actually be nice.
Okay, I think I'm going to start that now, let me see. Yeah, I'm already set up to share my sound. So, hi, I'm Steve Deasy, and I'm going to talk about the use of digital keyboards and MIDI to enhance your recordings. Many digital keyboards have built-in features and functions to help you make music, but you can expand these by connecting to a PC. You can connect a digital piano to a Windows or Mac computer and open up a whole new universe of possibilities in terms of composition and arranging and recording software. There's a whole variety of music software out there that will let you record your performance directly from the piano to the computer, edit it, and then print it out as a score. It is important to realize that when you're recording MIDI, you're not recording actual sound. What you are recording is data. What I mean by that is you're recording the various key presses, the performance, the pedal presses, changes of the controls, and so on. There's a big benefit of this. For example, if you record something and you don't like the sound you used for that recording, you can simply just change the sound without having to re-record the whole piece again. You could slow the recording down. You can speed the recording up. You can edit individual notes. If you recorded a piece and made a mistake, with data recording, you can go to your software program, change a single note. None of this is possible with actual audio sound recording. Now, to connect my piano audio, the sound recording part, to the computer, I connect the stereo aux outs left and right to channels 1 and 2 of my audio interface using a standard 1/4-inch instrument cable, much like the cable you use to connect your guitar to an amplifier. Next, to connect, you connect a standard USB cable, USB part B on one end, part A on the other end usually, and you connect it to any USB port on the computer. So this end goes into your keyboard, this end goes into your computer. That's all you need to send MIDI data to the computer and back again. And MIDI, as you know, or you may know, stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It's how the data gets back and forth to from your keyboard to the computer. Now, if you're playing a slightly older digital piano that does not have USB MIDI, don't worry. You can still connect to the computer the old-fashioned way, and that's the traditional 5-pin MIDI sockets. And all you need is a cable that has the traditional MIDI plugs on one end, an adapter in the middle, and then a connector on the other end that's a USB connector to connect into the computer. Finally, you'll need a bit of software called a driver so that your computer will recognize your digital piano, just like you need a driver for your printer or for your digital camera. All the major manufacturers of digital pianos are very good at providing up-to-date drivers at no charge. Install the drivers and you're good to go. Now for this demo, I'm going to select a piece from Bach short preloads and fugues. And I'm going to record about 8 or 9 bars of number 10, minuet and trio, allegretto, and 3/4 time in the key of G minor. Allegretto means fast but not too fast. That's about 98 to 109 beats per minute. This is not to be confused with allegretto, which is that feeling of remorse you get when you realize you're playing too fast or too slow. That's a joke. You don't have to laugh. Anyhow, let's go on with the demo. Okay, now we're going to start the demo part of our program. We have loaded up our DAW, which is Pro Tools 12. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a stereo audio track that that is going to be our P125 piano audio in, and we're going to record enable that. And then we're going to create a MIDI track, and that's going to capture our key presses that we talked about, and we're going to record enable that. Do a quick test, see if they're both coming in, and they are. And we're going to do one more thing, and that's we're going to create a click track so we can keep time. And then over here in the DAW, you'll notice that we can set the tempo. It's currently 120 beats per minute, which is too fast for allegretto. So we're going to change it to 100, which is between the 98 and 109 that we want. We're going to change the key signature to 3/4 time. And because there's 2 flats, it's not default C major, so we're going to change that. It has to be either B flat or G minor, and since the piece is in a minor key, we're going to choose G minor. So now we're ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and record the 9 bars or 8 or 9 bars that we want to record. And cut. So now you can see we've recorded the audio here and the MIDI down here. So, but if the astute listener will see there was a real bad note at the end. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the lead in the beginning, and we're going to move these back here so we don't have to wait that long each time. We don't need our click track anymore. So we are going to hide that and make it inactive. And so the mistake is here and the mistake is here. But what we can do is we can open this up in the MIDI editor, and this shows the piano keys over here that are being pressed. These are your key presses. It kind of looks like a player piano. We can see our offending note here, but I can see that all the notes are selected. And if we were to take this note and move it up, we've just transposed the whole piece up a whole step. So that's another thing I didn't even think of, is you can use this to transpose, but we're not going to do that here. We're going to just select that note, fix it to the B flat. And so now we fixed it in MIDI, but it's still wrong in the audio. So what we're going to do there is we're going to save that first track. So we'll duplicate this, and we're going to do another take, but this time we're going to record it by playing back the MIDI notes and re-recording it. So that's going to sound like this. All fixed. Isn't that wonderful? But at this point in our demonstration, we're going to decide, you know, I'm not going to stay with the sound of the Yamaha keyboard. So I'm going to take that track and I'm going to hide it and make it inactive. And we're going to add something called an instrument track. And what that's going to allow us to do is instead route those key presses to a virtual instrument. And so I'm going to select a virtual instrument that I called Contact, which inside has a lot of different sounds. And what we can do is we can look at all of those sounds and decide, you know, what we want to do. So as I scroll down here, you can see a myriad of different sounds. But I think I'm going to decide that, you know, I still want to use a piano. So I'm going to select this piano called the Grandeur, and up it pops, and then the loads into the memory. And then I'm going to look at my MIDI channel and make sure that I have Contact Channel 1 selected, which I do. And so now if I play this for us, we can hear the same performance going through a virtual instrument piano. Okay, very good. However, one of the things that we talked about was that once it's in MIDI, you can speed it up and slow it down. So we're going to go to our tempo here. We're going to change that to 130. And now everything will be sped up. So if we play it again, it sounds like this. So we made it allegro from allegretto. Let's change the tempo back to 100. And now what we want to do is we want to drive another virtual instrument and just pretend I added another part as an orchestration. In the interest of time, I'm just going to duplicate the same MIDI track. So we have it down here. I'm going to call this one piano. And then let's call this one pizzicato strings. How's that sound? So I'm going to add another instrument track. And so in here, we're going to add another stereo instrument track. And here it is. And so we will select another virtual instrument, and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to choose Expand 2, which is another virtual instrument or set of virtual instruments. And within here, within all these sounds that it has, we're going to choose from the strings, and we're going to come down here and choose the pizzicato strings. We're going to go to our second MIDI channel, duplicated MIDI channel here, and we can see it's still selecting contact because that's what we copied. But now we can select Expand to channel 1, and we can hear what that sounds like by playing it again with the instrument 1 with the piano brought all the way down. So let's hear what this sounds like. Okay, we're still at 130, so we're gonna slow it back down. So change that back to 100, and now let's hear it with the strings and piano mixed in. So let's play that one more time. Okay, so there's just one more trick that I want to show you that you can do with MIDI, and that's I can select both of these tracks, and I can say, let's look at those in the score editor. And now what you're seeing is that it's been brought up into this score. You could do this with many parts. You could do a soprano, alto, tenor, bass, vocal arrangement. You could do string arrangement, orchestral arrangements. It's really cool thing that you can do with MIDI. We can put a title in here, and we're going to call it My 8-Bar Song. And then on the composer down here, we're going to say Wolfgang Amadeus Jetski. And you can see that that pops up here. So that's pretty much all I wanted to show in today's MIDI demo. And so if you have questions, we're going to go back to the room, and feel free to ask whatever questions you have.
That was very cool, but the looked like looked like the score was not accurate. Am I right?
Well, yeah, because when I edited, I just copied it back to the beginning. If you were actually making a real score, you would be a lot more careful about being, right where the rhythm starts and where the measure starts. You can see I'm delayed by a 16th or an 8th and a 16th note there. Also, you would play the different parts separately so that they came out separately on the chord.
Is there a way you can change
So in other words, I just played and then I just popped it up unedited into the.
Wow, I wish I could play like that. But
Um,
is there a way you can make it less sensitive so it actually, here's a little bit off and fixes it for you?
Yeah, you can set the quantization of it. And there's a lot of different programs available that, when I made this recording, I just didn't, what's the word? I didn't want to labor over it. I just, whatever popped up just to give you an idea.
That was
But
incredible.
you can use it, you can use it to quite effect. So probably would have been more interest if more keyboard players showed up, but I think it might have been interesting anyway to the uninitiated.
It was great.
It was very interesting. I mean, I am a keyboard player, but that was fascinating, actually. I was just wondering about your choices of instruments, but that's a different story.
For me, part of this is saying, look, you got to learn some tech stuff. And part of me is going, no, go create something. But no, you got to learn some tech stuff. So thank you.
Steve, can you turn it upside down like that guy did with Goldberg variations? Doesn't work.
I think Mozart used to do those kind of things. And he also made board games that you could put the pieces in any order and it would be a playable piece. Fun with music composition.
Yeah.
Fun with Mozart. I mean, you could try, I mean,
have you done this?
You could try really modern instruments.
I also heard that
fun.
I also heard that your DNA can be transposed and you can actually play your DNA as a musical score. Have you heard about doing that?
That's new to me.
Yeah.
That's great.
Just don't play it just don't play it for anybody else.
It's all digital, right? So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Keep it to yourself.
Well, it's in your blood.
Yeah, but I don't need anyone studying my
That
blood.
would be depressing if you found your DNA song and you didn't like it. So maybe we shouldn't go there.
Yeah, kind of like that song that somebody recorded years ago. I've seen your aura and it's ugly. I don't know if you ever heard that one, but
or the Eagle said, I'd like to find your inner child and kick its ass. It's all the same thing.
Are there any other recording questions before we?
Yeah, before we go on.
Actually, the thing about DNA is really interesting because I'm in a science art mixer that meets every month. There was a woman from India, so it's people who work with science and art. There was a woman from India. She looked to be maybe 60 or something. And she was translating DNA into macrame. So she would use the angles in DNA to make her macrame. So it's very interesting that you were talking about DNA and music because one could interface, as it were, between all of these things.
Because we're kind of at the end of our time, if we could focus back in on Ken's question, because I think it's a real privilege that we have like Dilson and Ken here who can answer your detailed technical questions about recording. Is there anybody who has a question they would like to ask? Or maybe we've all saturated at this point.
Yeah, it's a lot, but what would be useful is we are going to get a copy of this video, and then if we could follow up and ask you a question, that might be helpful. If we've seen it again.
Is our contact information available to everyone through PMN?
I would imagine. I would imagine there is that directory. Yeah.
So, I mean, I certainly don't have a problem, and I assume Dilson, by virtue of you participating in this, you're okay with someone firing you a question?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if you have questions, you could just direct them to all three of us, because I think you might get a few different answers and perspectives that way. Yep. I've done entire recordings. I've done what Ken has demonstrated, and I've done some of what Dilson has demonstrated. So there's a lot of overlap between us. So if you just sort of direct your questions to the whole panel, I think we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for this, guys. This was great.
Thank you, Ken
I'll
and
send you all a
Dilson.
recording of our 90-person chorus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Yiddish chorus, by the way.
Wow, wow, wow.
I hope your DNA song is not copyrighted by somebody else.
That was my point in not sharing it.
Well, don't share it with Monsanto.
Oh no.
All right, see you around the town squares.
All right.
Okay.
Peace. Peace.
If nobody has anything else, because I have the power to do so, I think I'm going to end this meeting. I want to really thank Ken Whiteley for a great presentation on miking,
Dilson.
and Dilson's presentation. I want to say I learned something today, and I really appreciate that you shared the equalization techniques with us. So a round of applause for
Everybody.
and then everyone say goodbye. I'm going to end this meeting.
Bye, y'all.
See you tonight at the round robin, everybody.
All right, everybody.